Ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the most dangerous misunderstanding you can carry into this situation: the belief that distance always means they don't care. Because if you believe that, you will either chase them in panic, or you will collapse into self-blame, or you will harden your heart in the wrong direction. And here's the twist that changes everything. Sometimes the avoidant is staying away not because they don't care, but because they do. And the moment they realize they hurt you, their nervous system does something predictable. It retreats. It pulls the emergency brake. It runs for cover. Not because they want to lose you, but because they don't know how to face what they did without drowning in shame. Now, I want you to really hear the difference between guilt and growth. Guilt is a feeling. Growth is a behavior. An avoidant can feel guilty and still do nothing to repair. An avoidant can feel guilty and still stay silent. An avoidant can feel guilty and still leave you holding the pain alone. And that's what makes this so confusing, because the part of you that loves deeply says, if they feel bad, they'll come back and fix it. But the avoidant system doesn't work like that. Their guilt doesn't always pull them closer. It often pushes them farther, because guilt triggers shame and shame triggers avoidance. So imagine what it feels like in their body. They did something, said something, disappeared, withdrew, dismissed you, and now they know you're hurt. They can sense it. They can feel the tension. They can almost see your disappointment. And instead of leaning in and saying, "I'm sorry, I want to repair," their mind starts scanning for escape routes. Because to repair, they would have to do something that terrifies them. They would have to stay present while you feel what you feel. They would have to tolerate your sadness without running. They would have to answer questions. They would have to admit they were wrong. They would have to risk hearing, "You hurt me," and not be able to dodge it. That kind of emotional exposure feels like a spotlight, and for an avoidant, a spotlight feels like danger. Now here's where you get pulled into a trap. You start interpreting their distance as a statement about your worth. If I mattered. And that thought can destroy you. It can make you beg. It can make you explain. It can make you send soft messages trying to make it safe for them to return. It can make you apologize for having feelings. It can make you lower your standards just to get the connection back. But the truth is more complex. Their staying away might be less about your value and more about their inability to face the consequences of their actions. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why you must stop romanticizing their distance. Yes, sometimes guilt is real. Sometimes they do feel awful. Sometimes they are replaying it in their head at night. Sometimes they are thinking about you and feeling regret. But guilt without repair is still abandonment. Guilt without accountability is still harm. And if they stay away after hurting you, you must understand what you are really dealing with, not a lack of feeling, but a lack of emotional capacity. Because a mature partner doesn't disappear when they cause pain. A mature partner leans in. A mature partner says, "I know I hurt you, I want to talk, I want to understand, I want to fix what I broke." A mature partner can tolerate discomfort for the sake of love. But an avoidant often confuses discomfort with danger. So instead of repair, they choose distance. They choose silence. They choose the illusion of control. Now, here is the most important part of this keynote, the one that will change how you move from this point forward. If you believe they're staying away because they care, you might feel tempted to rescue them from their guilt. You might feel tempted to soften the consequence. You might feel tempted to send the message that says, "It's okay, don't worry, I understand." And I'm not saying you shouldn't have compassion. I'm saying compassion without standards will keep you trapped. If you remove the cost of hurting you, you teach them that they can hurt you and avoid the repair, and still keep access to you later. So your power here is not in proving you're safe. Your power is in holding reality. You can be kind and still be firm. You can be compassionate and still require accountability. You can say, through your energy, "I'm open to a real conversation, but I'm not available for silence." You can say, "I'm not here to be punished with distance because you can't face guilt." You can say, "If you want me in your life, you will have to show up for the hard part, not just the easy part." And this is where curiosity becomes your weapon. Instead of obsessing over whether they care, start observing whether they can repair. Instead of asking, "Do they miss me?" ask, "Are they capable of accountability?" Instead of thinking, "Maybe they're staying away because they feel bad," think, "If they feel bad, what will they do about it?" Because the truth is, many avoidants want closeness, but they want it without consequences. They want comfort without responsibility. They want love without exposure. And that's why they stay away, not because they don't want you, but because they don't want to face the part of themselves that hurt you. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's possible they're staying away because they care. But care is not the standard. Repair is. Accountability is. Consistency is. Emotional presence is. And the moment you stop chasing proof of their feelings and start demanding proof of their maturity, you stop being controlled by their silence, and you start being led by your self-respect. Ladies and gentlemen, the second keynote is the one that changes how you interpret everything you've been calling space. Because the avoidant isn't simply running from love, they're running from shame. And if you don't understand shame, you will keep taking their distance personally. You will keep trying to be better. You will keep bending your needs into a smaller shape, and you will keep mistaking silence for truth. But shame is not truth. Shame is a threat signal in their nervous system, and when shame is triggered, an avoidant doesn't move toward repair, they move toward escape. Let me show you how this works. When you say, "You hurt me," that's a direct mirror. It reflects their impact back to them. For a secure person, that mirror is uncomfortable but manageable. They can feel guilt, accept responsibility, apologize, and repair. For an avoidant, that mirror can feel like an identity attack. But I am wrong. Not I made a mistake, but I am a mistake. That's shame, and shame is heavier than guilt. Guilt says I need to fix what I did. Shame says I need to hide so nobody sees me. This is why an avoidant can do something that looks cold, something that looks like they don't care, and then disappear. Because the moment they feel the weight of your disappointment, the moment they feel like they failed, the moment they feel like they're being seen as the villain, their nervous system goes into self-protection. They shut down, they minimize, they rationalize, they detach, they retreat. Not because you're not worth it, but because facing you would force them to face themselves. Now here's the trap. When you see them retreat, you assume the problem is that your emotions are too much. So you start shrinking them. You start controlling yourself. You start walking on eggshells. You start speaking softer, asking less, tolerating more. You think you're being mature, but what you're doing is protecting them from shame at the cost of protecting yourself from pain. And over time, that creates a relationship where your feelings are dangerous and their avoidance is normal. Your need for repair becomes drama, and their silence becomes space. That's how shame runs the entire dynamic, not by screaming, but by making you doubt your right to be human. Because understand this, shame does not want conversation. Shame does not want accountability. Shame wants to disappear. Shame wants to reset the scene so it never has to face consequences. That's why after hurting you, they may go quiet instead of apologizing. That's why they may act like nothing happened instead of repairing. That's why they may send a casual, "Hey," weeks later, as if the pain they caused was a minor glitch. It's not because they don't remember. It's because shame wants to skip the hard part. Shame wants to enter the relationship without walking through the doorway of responsibility. And this is where you must be very clear. An avoidant shame can create distance, but distance is not repair. Distance is not a solution. Distance is not love. Distance is a coping mechanism, and coping mechanisms can be deeply selfish without being intentionally cruel. They are designed to protect the person using them, not the person being hurt by them. Now I want you to see what shame looks like in real time. You bring up the pain, and suddenly they get defensive. They say, "You're overreacting." They say, "I didn't mean it like that." They say, "Why are you always making problems?" They say, "This is why I need space." They flip the focus from your feelings to your tone, your timing, your neediness. That's shame trying to escape. Because if they stay in the conversation, they might have to admit, "Yes, I hurt you." And for someone whose identity is built on not being vulnerable, not being wrong, not being dependent, that admission feels like collapse. So what do? They detach and withdraw to regain control. They stay away so they don't have to feel the heat of accountability. They tell themselves a story that justifies it. "It's better if I don't talk right now. I'll make it worse. They're too emotional. I need time." And sometimes there's a grain of truth. Yes, they may be overwhelmed. But the pattern is still the pattern. When repair is needed most, they retreat. When emotional responsibility is required, they hide. When the relationship needs maturity, they choose avoidance. And ladies and gentlemen, here's the part that will save you. Once you understand that they run from shame, you stop trying to convince them with more emotion. You stop sending paragraphs hoping they'll finally get it. You stop begging them to have the conversation. You realize your feelings are not the enemy, their shame tolerance is the limitation. Your needs are not too much, their capacity is too small right now. And that's not a judgment, it's a reality. So what do you do with this reality? You stop rescuing them from shame by silencing yourself. You stop making it safe for them to avoid repair. You stop accepting space as a substitute for accountability. You hold a calm standard. I'm open to repair, but I won't pretend nothing happened. You don't chase them into silence, you let silence expose them. You don't argue with their defenses. You observe their behavior. Because shame has one kryptonite: steady boundaries. Not rage, not begging, steady boundaries. And when you hold that line, something powerful happens. Either they build the capacity to face you, to apologize, to repair, to grow, or they stay away because their shame is louder than their love. And that answer, painful as it may be, is clarity. Because love that cannot tolerate accountability will always become a wound. Ladies and gentlemen, the third keynote is where the mask comes off, because this is the point most people get fooled. They see distance and they assume it means healing. They see silence and they assume it means reflection. They hear, "I need time," and they assume maturity. But the truth is, for many avoidants, silence is not growth. It is damage control disguised as self-awareness. It is the fastest way to escape consequences without admitting they're escaping consequences. Let's make this painfully clear. When an avoidant hurts you, there are only two paths if they are emotionally mature. One, they own the impact, they apologize, they repair. Two, they admit they can't show up, and they let you go with honesty. But what often happens instead is a third path, the path of disappearing while keeping a door open. The path of staying away without closure. The path of leaving you in suspense. The path of maybe later, not right now. I'm confused, I need space, I'm not ready. Words that sound reasonable but function like a smokescreen. Because you can't hold someone accountable when they're not in the room. And that's why silence becomes so powerful. It removes the possibility of real conversation. It removes the possibility of you asking questions. It removes the possibility of you seeing their face while they explain themselves. It removes the possibility of them feeling your pain. It removes the possibility of consequence. It resets the game to their comfort zone: distance, control, avoidance. Now here's the heartbreaking part: you're a good person. So you interpret their distance in the best possible light. You say they're overwhelmed. You say they need time to think. You say they're processing. You say they don't want to make it worse. And yes, sometimes those things are partly true. But if their pattern is always withdrawal when responsibility is required, then it's not processing, it's protection. It's not reflection, it's escape. It's not growth, it's avoidance. Because real growth has a very specific signature. It comes with repair. It comes with courage. It comes with humility. It comes with consistency. It does not come with months of silence and then a casual, "hey," as if nothing happened. It does not come with vague explanations that keep you hopeful but never secure. It does not come with half answers that keep you emotionally hooked. So when I say silence is damage control, here's what I mean. After hurting you, an avoidant may feel a wave of guilt and shame. They don't want to face your disappointment, because disappointment feels like being exposed. They don't want to answer questions, because questions feel like losing control. They don't want to sit in a difficult conversation, because difficulty feels like danger. So they choose the move that instantly reduces their discomfort: they withdraw. And then they tell themselves a story that makes that withdrawal look noble. They're better off without me. I don't want to hurt them more. I need time. I'm not good at this. I don't want drama. It sounds mature. It sounds caring. But it often serves one function: to protect them from having to face the weight of their impact. And this is the part you must understand. They may not even be lying on purpose. Avoidants can genuinely believe their story because their nervous system is trying to justify survival. But whether they are consciously manipulating or unconsciously coping, the result for you is the same. You're left holding the pain alone. You're left waiting. You're left guessing. You're left making meaning out of silence. And that's where you get trapped, because your mind fills in the blank with hope. You think maybe they're coming back. You think maybe they realize what they lost. You think maybe they're changing. But hope without evidence becomes self-harm. It becomes emotional self-abandonment. Because while you're waiting, you're not healing. You're not moving forward. You're not closing the chapter. You're living in limbo, and limbo is a relationship killer. It drains your energy. It destroys your confidence. It keeps you emotionally available to someone who is emotionally absent. So let me give you a hard truth that will protect you. If someone hurts you and then goes silent, they are choosing their comfort over your repair. If someone stays away and offers no accountability, they are choosing escape over responsibility. If someone can only show up when things are easy, they are not safe when things are real. And a relationship that cannot survive real conversation is not a relationship, it's a pattern of avoidance and pursuit. Now, what do you do with this keynote? You stop interpreting silence as love. You stop treating distance like evidence of depth. You stop giving their absence a romantic meaning. You become a person who only responds to reality, not to potential. You tell yourself if they want to repair, they will show up for repair. You tell yourself if they want to be in my life, they will communicate. You tell yourself, if they are growing, I will see it in actions, not in silence. And here's the most powerful shift. You stop trying to prove you're safe, and you start requiring that they be safe. You stop chasing closure from a person who refuses to speak, and you give yourself closure through your boundary. You stop begging for honesty and you let their silence be the honesty. Because silence is an answer. Distance is a decision. And when you finally accept that, you stop being controlled by the story, and you start being guided by self-respect. Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth keynote is the one that hurts, but it's also the one that sets you free, because it separates emotion from responsibility. The truth is, an avoidant can miss you deeply and still stay away. An avoidant can regret hurting you and still stay silent. An avoidant can think about you at night and still refuse to repair. And if you don't understand this, you will spend months, sometimes years, chasing proof of feeling instead of demanding proof of maturity. Most people believe that if someone really misses you, they will act like it. If someone really loves you, they will show up. If someone really regrets it, they will fix it. That is how a healthy, secure nervous system works. But the avoidant system is different. Their feelings do not automatically translate into behavior, because behavior requires tolerance for vulnerability, tolerance for discomfort, tolerance for accountability, and those are exactly the muscles that avoidants often haven't built. So when you say, how can they stay away if they miss me? You're thinking like a secure person. You're thinking with a nervous system that believes closeness is safe and repair is possible. The avoidant nervous system doesn't always believe that. For them, closeness can feel like a trap, repair can feel like exposure, and exposure can feel like danger. So they will choose the move that lowers their anxiety even if it breaks your heart. That move is staying away. Now here's the confusing part. They might actually be missing you. They might be stalking your socials. They might be replaying memories. They might be feeling that empty space in their day where you used to be. They might feel a wave of regret when they realize the comfort they had with you is gone. But missing you can still be safe for them, because missing you happens privately. Missing you happens in their mind. Missing you doesn't require them to be accountable. Missing you doesn't require them to face your pain. Missing you doesn't require them to risk rejection. Missing you doesn't require them to admit they were wrong. Missing you is emotional, but it's contained. Repair, on the other hand, is public. Repair is relational. Repair is messy. Repair forces them to sit in the discomfort of what they caused. Repair forces them to listen. Repair forces them to stay present while you express disappointment. Repair forces them to be humble. And humility is the most threatening thing to an avoidant ego that survives by staying in control. So they choose what feels easier. They choose to feel you from a distance rather than face you up close. They choose longing over accountability. They choose nostalgia over repair. They choose missing you over showing up for you. And that's why you must stop using their feelings as the measuring stick for whether you should wait. Feelings don't build relationships. Behavior does. This is where many people get emotionally trapped. They start collecting signs. He watched my story. She liked my post. I asked a friend about me.
She sent a song.
He texted, I miss you. And those signs can light up your hope like a fire. But hope can become a cage if you treat breadcrumbs as commitment. Because those signs might simply be a way to soothe their loneliness while avoiding real repair. It might be their nervous system reaching for comfort without taking responsibility. It might be them testing the door to see if it's still open without doing the work required to walk through it like an adult. So let me tell you the brutal truth you need. Missing you does not equal readiness. Regret does not equal accountability. Love, in their head, does not equal safety in your life. You don't need someone who thinks about you. You need someone who can show up for you. You don't need someone who feels bad. You need someone who repairs the damage. You don't need someone who misses you when you're gone. You need someone who values you when you're present. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here is the power move that changes everything. Stop asking, do they miss me? Start asking, can they handle intimacy without running? Stop asking, do they regret it? Start asking, do they take responsibility without defensiveness? Stop asking, are they hurting too? Start asking, are they willing to do the work to not hurt me again? Because your goal is not to be missed. Your goal is to be loved well. And this is why the avoidant staying away can actually be a form of emotional selfishness, even if they feel guilty. Because while they protect themselves from discomfort, you carry all the discomfort. While they avoid the conversation, you replay it alone. While they hide from accountability, you question your worth. While they take space, you bleed in silence. That's why feelings are not enough. Their feelings do not heal you. Their regret does not rebuild trust. Only repair does. So what should you do when you suspect they miss you but stay away? You do not chase. You do not soothe them. You do not offer comfort that replaces accountability. You do not send a message to make it easier for them to escape responsibility. You hold a standard. You let behavior speak. You let time reveal. You let their silence be information. You let their absence tell you what their capacity is right now. And if they truly miss you in a way that matters, they will eventually show it with action. Not with a late night, "I miss you." Not with a song. Not with a vague apology. With real repair. With real conversation. With consistency that lasts. Because the only kind of missing that means anything is the kind that turns into growth. Everything else is just emotion floating in the air while you're left trying to breathe. Ladies and gentlemen, the fifth keynote is where you reclaim your power, because it exposes the trap that keeps you stuck. If you soothe them too fast, you train them to hurt you again. And I know that might sound harsh, because you're not trying to be weak, you're trying to be loving. You're not trying to encourage bad behavior, you're trying to reduce conflict. You're not trying to teach them they can disappear, you're trying to keep the connection alive. But the nervous system does not learn through your intentions, it learns through what gets rewarded. And when an avoidant hurts you, then retreats, then returns to comfort without repair, the relationship becomes a place where damage has no cost. Let's walk through how this happens, because it's subtle and it's deadly. They pull away, they say something cold, they disappear, they leave you anxious, confused, emotionally raw. Then, later, they come back softly. A casual text, a friendly check-in, a late night, "I miss you." And your heart, exhausted from the pain, reaches for relief. Your body wants the tension to end. Your mind wants a sign that you matter. So you respond quickly, warmly, forgivingly. You don't bring up what happened, because you fear it will push them away again. You swallow the pain. You pretend you're fine. You make it easy. And in that moment, you may feel like you saved the connection. But what you actually did was teach a pattern: hurt, withdraw, return, receive comfort. That is emotional conditioning. And if you keep repeating it, you are training their nervous system that after harm, they don't have to repair. They just have to wait until you miss them enough to reopen the door. The avoidant learns, if I do something that damages trust, I can avoid the consequences by disappearing. If I return later, they'll be relieved, and the topic will disappear. So the behavior that should create accountability instead creates a reset, and that reset becomes their escape hatch. They never have to develop the muscle of repair, because you keep doing it for them. Now here's the painful part: you are also training yourself. You're training yourself to accept less. You're training yourself to abandon your own boundaries. You're training your nervous system that peace comes from swallowing your feelings. You're training yourself to believe that love requires self-silencing. And that is how good people become drained, bitter and confused, not because they didn't love enough, but because they kept forgiving without requiring change. So what's the solution? The solution is not to become cruel. The solution is not to hold grudges. The solution is to stop trading your dignity for temporary relief. Because the relief you feel when they come back can be addictive. It feels like oxygen after suffocation. But ask yourself, why were you suffocating in the first place? Why is contact with them a rescue instead of a steady warmth? Why does their return feel like a win instead of a baseline? Because the relationship has trained you to survive on uncertainty. Ladies and gentlemen, if someone can hurt you and then re-enter your life without repair, you will never feel safe. You might feel connected for a moment, but underneath, your body will stay on alert. You will monitor their tone. You will overthink their response time. You will wonder when the next disappearance is coming. You will become anxious not because you're broken, but because your body has learned that closeness with them is unstable. And the more you soothe them quickly, the more unstable it becomes. Here's what avoidants secretly need, and it may surprise you. They need consequences that are calm. They need a standard that doesn't scream. They need to learn that closeness requires responsibility. Not because you're trying to control them, but because you're teaching the truth. Real relationships don't function without repair. A person who cannot repair is not safe, no matter how much they miss you. So instead of soothing them fast, you slow down. You pause. You respond. But you don't reward the return with instant access. You don't punish. You don't attack. You simply require a conversation. You hold the line that most people are terrified to hold. I'm open to talking, but I'm not going to pretend nothing happened. That one sentence can change your life, because it forces reality back into the room. If they truly care, they will sit in that reality. They will feel uncomfortable, yes, but they will stay. They will apologize without excuses. They will ask what you need. They will listen. They will repair. They will show change. And if they don't, if they get defensive, if they disappear again, if they say you're too much, if they call you dramatic, then you just learned something priceless, They want comfort without responsibility. They want access without accountability. They want the benefits of you without the work of you. And this is where your self-respect becomes your protection. You stop giving instant forgiveness to stop your own anxiety. You stop accepting casual comebacks that bypass repair. You stop opening the door for someone who refuses to walk through it like an adult. You stop confusing your kindness with your worth, because your kindness is not a free pass for someone to keep hurting you. So the fifth keynote is simple, but it takes courage. Don't soothe them faster than they repair. Don't comfort them while you're still bleeding. Don't make it easy to return to your heart without earning trust back. Because the moment you require repair, you are no longer available for the cycle. And when you are no longer available for the cycle finally breaks. Ladies and gentlemen, the sixth keynote is the line in the sand, the moment you stop living in hope and start living in reality. Because if an avoidant is staying away after hurting you, the biggest danger is not their silence, it's what happens when they come back. The return is where most people collapse, not because they're weak, but because their nervous system has been starved for relief. And the avoidance return can feel like proof that you mattered, proof that they regret it, proof that the story isn't over. But here's the truth, a return without change is not love coming back, it's the cycle coming back. So the sixth keynote is this: when they come back, you stop asking emotional questions and you start asking power questions. You stop asking, do you want me? Because anyone can want you. Wanting is easy. Wanting is emotional. Wanting happens at midnight when they feel lonely. Wanting happens when they fear losing access. Wanting happens when your absence finally hits them. Wanting is not the standard. The standard is, what will you do differently? That question is not rude. It's not aggressive. It's not an ultimatum. It's maturity. It's leadership. It's you refusing to give your heart to the same pattern in a different outfit. It's you refusing to reward regret without repair. Because if they hurt you and stayed away, they already know what happened. They already know the moment they went cold. They already know they disappeared. They already know they left you holding the pain. So when they return with a casual message, that casualness is a test. It's them checking if they can slide back in without accountability. It's them hoping your love will erase the consequences. And this is where you either become the old version of you, or you become the upgraded version of you. The old you is relieved, you respond fast, you act warm, you avoid the hard conversation. Because you're scared that if you bring up the pain, they'll vanish again. You accept the return as the repair. But the return is not the repair. The return is the beginning of a test. Can they face what they did? Can they tolerate discomfort? Can they stay present? Can they take responsibility? Can they rebuild trust with action? So your new move is patience. Not the patience of waiting in limbo, but the patience of observing behavior. You don't jump back into intimacy. You don't hand them instant access. You don't give them the comfort of your softness while they still refuse accountability. You slow everything down and you watch, because time reveals what words hide. And here is what you're watching for: consistency over intensity. Avoidants often return with intensity when they fear loss. They'll say big things. They'll sound emotional. They'll promise. They'll talk about missing you. But intensity is not stability. The question is, can they stay consistent when the fear fades? Can they show up when it's not dramatic? Can they communicate when they feel triggered? Can they handle your needs without shutting down? Can they follow through on small things day after day, not just on one big apology? Because real change has a specific look. It looks like responsibility without defensiveness. It looks like humility without excuses. It looks like them naming the behavior. I withdrew. I avoided the conversation. I left you in pain. I'm sorry. Not I was busy. Not you're too sensitive. Not I didn't mean it. Real change looks like accountability that doesn't shift blame. It looks like effort that doesn't require you to beg for it. It looks like them initiating repair, not you dragging it out of them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where you must be emotionally strong, because if you ask, what will you do differently? An avoidant who is not ready will react. They might say you're being dramatic. They might say you're making things hard. They might say you're stuck in the past. They might say they came back to be nice and you're tacking. That reaction is information. That reaction tells you they want comfort without consequence. They want access without responsibility. They want the benefits of you without the work of repair. And in that moment, you must resist the urge to explain yourself. The old you would over-explain to be understood. The new you doesn't need to be understood by someone who refuses to be accountable. The new you simply holds the standard. I'm not interested in repeating the same cycle. That's it. Calm. Clear. Final. Because the truth is, if they truly want you, they will not be scared of your standard. They will respect it. They will rise to it. They will welcome the conversation, even if it's uncomfortable, because they'll understand that you're not punishing them. You're protecting the relationship from repeating harm. So the sixth keynote is the final evolution. You stop letting relief make decisions for you. You stop letting longing override your dignity. You stop letting, "I miss you," hypnotize you into forgetting what happened. You hold the most powerful boundary of all, the boundary of reality. You require that their return comes with change, not just emotion. And here's the beautiful part. Once you live this way, you become unstoppable. Because either they rise and finally become the partner who can repair, or they reveal they can't, and you walk away with clarity instead of confusion. You don't lose, you win your peace. You win your self-respect. You win your future. And that is the only ending that a healed heart accepts.